皆様、大変お待たせいたしました。
Thank you very much for waiting. Now I'd like to start the organized by IATSS, the 8th IATS International Forum, which is a gifts symposium, will be started. I'm the moderator. Thank you very much. I'm serving as MC today. Now I would like to invite from the International Association, Dr. Takeuchi, who is the president of the International Association of Traffic and Safety Sciences. The President Takeuchi, please, from IATSS. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Takeuchi. I'm the president of IATSS, International Association of Traffic and Safety Sciences. In opening this 8th GIFS International Symposium, I'd like to make the opening remark. In this meeting, it has been, just like in any other international conferences, this is the hybrid conference, combining the physical and virtual conference. So this is the hybrid conferences, like any other international conferences. Today, in this venue, for those who are here today in the venue, and also there are people who are accessing and participating through online. And I'd like to express my sincere appreciation. And also in this symposium, in organizing this symposium, the related organizations, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation. In terms of IATS was established in 1974. IATSS was established in 1974. Focusing on research and studies on the traffic as well as safety, and that was the main part of our activities, and to achieve such a desired traffic society. We would mark the 50th year very soon. For that 50th year anniversary, we are making various initiatives as an IATSS. All over the world, the environment surrounding the traffic has been changing very rapidly. Environment issues, energy issues, climate change, health and safety, by the various practical initiatives, the resolution to those issues are required. Therefore, based on the unique characteristics of each country or region, or based on the cultural background, we need to reconsider the role of the traffic. And that is becoming even more important these days. Our association's activity based on these perspectives, not only in the domain of the sciences, but also all the stakeholders and related participants, we focus on the respective positioning of transdisciplinary. Since I became the president of this association, I have established this principle of transdisciplinary. And what we mean by that is we need to overcome the walls, silos within each discipline, but rather we need to become transdisciplinary. But also, we need to connect between the academic science and the real world and society need to be connected to co-establish the desired society. That is why we sort of created the word and transdisciplinary, which is not so often heard in Japanese. But since 2015, we have been conducting GIFTS. This is the abbreviation of Global Interactive Forum on Traffic and Safety, has been abbreviated as GIFTS. And this international forum has been conducted every year since 2015 to aim at the co-creation of the wisdom in a sustainable manner. This marks the 8th times of the GIFTS and based on the traffic culture, which creates and the creatively creates the value, and that is the theme. And mobility provides the positive aspects and impact, such as the pleasure of moving, mobility, as well as the enjoyment and the more richer lives. Not just on the negative, but rather on the more focusing on the positive aspect, looking at the post-COVID-19 world to make the ideal city planning and town making, and also how the traffic should be in the society. And we like to invite all the experts and specialists in internally outside as well to discuss about that. I myself, in such an occasion, well, we like to look at I feel that we need to take, I'm very interested in the positive aspects and positive impact from these initiatives. In Japan, post-COVID-19, in this society, it will become more autonomous and to make some regional and also create the regional development as well. And also more recently, information IT revolution can be utilized and so that we can make some distributed society being connected through network. And that type of community making is possible. And that is what we like to consider together. And all over the world, based on the examples from all over the world, we like to learn more about how we should be in terms of traffic society. I hope that we have the fruitful discussions. And hope to have your active participation in our conference. And also with that, I'd like to conclude my opening remark. And so therefore, I thank you very much. And thank you very much for today. Thank you.
Takeuchi 会長。
Thank you very much, President Takeuchi. Next, we would like to invite to the podium the chair of organizing committee of this forum from Chuo University, Professor Akihiro Nakamura, and he would like to explain to you the purpose of this meeting today. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for the kind introduction. I'm from Chuo University. My name is Nakamura. I'm the chair of the organizing committee for this forum. This year, the forum is being held in a hybrid format, and I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to all of you joining online and in the venue. Despite a very busy schedule, I would like to extend my thanks on behalf of the committee. Now, as President Takeuchi mentioned earlier, our society is working from the perspective of a transdisciplinary. And at this symposium, we are trying to provide a trigger opportunity to talk about transport from a transdisciplinary perspective. And we have started in 2015. This is the 8th symposium we're holding today. Now, in the past, guests has discussed the question of how can a safe and secure transport society be achieved at various levels, from policy all the way to the ground, to the road. And in the course of these discussions, we have tried to understand the ideal state of the transport society as a public space from various perspectives, including the nature of cities, technological innovations, such as automated driving, and people's lives. Many countries and institutions have participated in these debates. Experts from countries such as the UK, the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, India, South Africa, and Egypt, as well as practitioners from international organizations such as the World Bank, World Health Organization, and the Asian Development Bank, have participated and shared a wide range of perspectives and experiences. We believe that over the past 7 years, we have created a forum for discussion that makes the most of this international network. And the organizing committee believes that the foundation laid should be used to further develop the functions of the forum in the future. We want to actively disseminate the knowledge that IATS has accumulated over the years, both domestically and internationally, to make our resources available to as many people as possible. We believe that GIFTS is a great place to disseminate and share such knowledge and experience internationally. GIFTS was originally started as a platform to discuss what IATS should do when it celebrates its 50th anniversary in 2024. Now that the 50th anniversary is approaching, we believe it is important to look further, 30 or 50 years into the future, and we need to discuss what we should be doing now for that future, for the ideals of that distant future. At IATS, we have created a platform called GRATS to organize the definition of transport culture and explore road user behavior and the activities of people and organizations involved in road safety, and continue to discuss how countries around the world can work together towards reducing road accidents. As a summary of these discussions, last year, GIFTS held a discussion on the shared vision that should be pursued to reduce road accidents with the participation of international experts and practitioners. In order to realize an ideal traffic society, it is necessary not only to reduce traffic accidents, but also to reduce the negative aspects, such as environmental pollution and parking problems. And as the President mentioned earlier, at this year's GIFTS symposium, we want to discuss how to reduce the negative aspects. And when we came up with a theme for this year's symposium, we wanted to focus on the discussion on the benefits, not only the negative aspects such as cost reduction. In other words, when discussing the future state of the city, we need to think about how we can reduce the negative aspects and also focus on the positive aspects, satisfaction and enjoyment that come from living and moving around the city or town. This year's GIFTS aims to discuss the ideal transport society and city planning from the perspective of positive utility. During the COVID pandemic, movement restrictions have reminded people all over the world of the benefits of mobility. People connect with other people and form towns and cultures, and enhances the creativity of themselves, communities, and society. The way towns and mobility are organized influences people's creativity and changes the value of the town itself. We believe that the value criteria for the positive benefits of living and traveling are unique and regional in character. Today, Professor Fumihiko Nakamura of the University of Tokyo, who has been leading the discussion on mobility design and urban space at this conference, will first give a keynote speech titled Mobility with Value Creation. Unfortunately, due to health reasons, Professor Nakamura will be joining us online. And I would like to thank Professor Nakamura for joining us despite his ill health. And I know that those of you who are joining us in the venue wanted to see him live, but unfortunately he cannot join us live today. After that, we will have a discussion with 3 panelists. The first panelist is Ms. Susanne Elferding. She lives in Germany and is a freelance translator and interpreter, responsible for pedestrian traffic at the Hamburg Ministry of Transport, and also the member of a German Association for Urban, Regional and Spatial Planning, a researcher and advisor for urban planning and transportation. The second speaker is Dr. Pimsuk Sanit. She's a lecturer at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning, Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. Her research specializes in urban and transport planning, with particular emphasis on integrated strategies for sustainable urban mobility in developing countries. The third and final speaker is Ms. Yumi Vincent Fuji. She lives in France and is an author and researcher of French urban policy. She writes and lectures on themes such as urban planning and public transport, mobility and urban space reorganization, regional development and city center revitalization, and also coordinates case studies and visits to France. In addition to these three presenters with different perspectives, the keynote speaker, Professor Fumiko Nakamura, will join them for the discussion. At this year's gifts, we expect to discuss how towns, cities, and countries can change in the future, and from a variety of perspectives, how we can expand the happiness and enjoyment derived from living in the city and moving in it as well. Academic and practical fields will engage in terms of perspectives and generate new knowledge through mutual organic collaboration. That is what we try to do at GIFTS. I know the time is truly limited, but I hope that we can have a fruitful time both online and in the venue. And that concludes my explanation about the intention of the symposium. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nakamura. Next, we would like to move on to the IATSS member, Graduate School of University of Tokyo, from the new domain, project professor, New Frontier Sciences, the University of Tokyo, Dr. Nakamura. So please, Dr. Nakamura, go ahead and start. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Fumiko Nakamura. Not in good conditions, and yesterday I was coughing, but I'm quite well actually because I was coughing though, and that's why since yesterday afternoon I'm at home, but I'm not going outside. But I'm fine now with the regular. There's no fever I have, so that is fine. Thank you very much. So next slide. Let me share the slide. So do you see my slide? I hope that you can see it. So these are the agenda or the items that I'm going to discuss. And I'll talk about mobility with value creation. 4 years ago, or 4.5 years ago, in the IEIETS, we have this project. And we have discussed with various experts. And what I have also like to talk about what I have learned from that as well. And in terms of my story, I talk about the importance of move on trips and the importance of the place of the forum, as Dr. Takeuchi has just mentioned, and Dr. Nakamura also has mentioned that we need a place in order for us to move. So I would further try to say we need to redefine the public transport in a much more precise way, and then we can redesign of the mobility with value creation. And in case of autonomous driving and with MaaS, mobility as a service, is quite commonly heard. But how does it connect to these new technologies? And this is the expected roles of new technology. And then I would like to conclude and summarize at the end. First, I'd like to talk about the importance of the move or trips. And this is needless to say, but however, you can have seen the going out ratio in nationwide, also in Tokyo metropolitan area, we have declined. And the MLIT has such a data of Japanese Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport. And that they have researched and they studied and they have seen that it went down, the people going out. But also this is from our cabinet office. The health conditions in the 5-stage evaluation and how much they are actually going out. Every day is a blue color, but then 3 times per week, or 1 time per week, or 1 to 2 times per month, or 0, or even fewer per year. And what we know is those people who feel good about their health, definitely they go out. So I'm not very persuasive because I'm coughing, but we need physical and mental, we need movement or trips for the physical and mental health. But then we want to make some moves or trips, we need some destinations. In the traffic planning, we would learn from such a place and activities, but we need a destination, place, and activities for the importance of trips. And that's true, but by making some moves, then it would also vitalize and activate more activities in the region. And that would also create more demand for transport services. And the regional railroad, people talk about eliminating such a line, and MLIT meeting. And in Japan, we have sometimes discussion like that, or I make some presentation in that meeting. That's a very challenging issue to eliminate the bread-making or the railway in the region, in the local area. But then, how can we produce more demand of the transport service is an important aspect. So, in the, I don't know, we can say urban management, but from the management perspective, we would need, if we have more people and in the town, then we would have the more higher rents in the real estate, and then therefore the land or the building price or rent would go up, and then you would have more revenues for the people who can make more money, and therefore result in increased tax revenues. In the New York, when Janessa came to Japan from New York, she talked about that. We had some lecture meeting with support, and the way she talked is to make some mobility, and that would also place more people in the downtown area where we would have to provide more tax revenues. And then also in terms of the health, to promote health, would enable for us to save the medical expenditures, and then therefore we can also save from the unnecessary subsidies as well. And it's not just making money or just saving money. However, we need to effectively utilize the resources and money. That's why I think it's important. And therefore, so starting from health, we have destination and the activities there, and that making the place, and then more activity result in more activities, more passengers for transport, and also be a positive impact on transport. And then that would also result in tax revenue increase, and then we can save the subsidies, and those are the flow that we could expect. At any rate, what we do in terms of the meaning of our moves, that we need to position that, and that is the third point. And next, then when one is moved, then what about the place or locations? And for us, when we are a student, from the master teachers or professors told us that as a guide of the town, in the road, there's a function of traffic and access from the road. And that is what I've learned. For the past 20 years, however, in the link portion, the traffic function and access function are there, but in the place, we have placemaking. So link and place. I could talk more in detail, but if I may say, let it be easier to understand. Just by having the streets, the vehicles that would just flow, or people or bicycles and so on. But then for such a place, that has a meaning of the place or locations in itself. In the IEATS, we have by the Professor Peter Jones of the UK. I think we had an opportunity to listen to that. And in the slide that he is often using is the one that says here. how do policy perspectives shape cities? And how, for that questions, with the time axis, as you can see from the left to the right, but then originally that was a car, a passenger vehicle, where people owned those cars to be able to use the car, but then to make the road, to make the parking lot, and then to have without making congestions, to reduce the density. And that is what we've been happening. And that is why sustainability started to be used, and also coming from 1990s. But then public transport, bicycles, and the road space redistribution, and to make not only the vehicle lanes to be increased for the cars, but also to make these spaces, and those type of discussions are taking place. And that would result in the future, which you can see in the orange color, in the city of places, and that you can do the public realm and the street activities and traffic restraint, and for the meaning of the public. And those things could exist, and that is the new flow that we can expect now.
Let's start with an example in the UK, Exhibition Street in London. As you can see on the next slide, cars actually travel on this road. However, this was one of the pioneering shared streets, and it's quoted many times, and it is used for multiple different purposes. My biggest surprise about this street was the following. If there is a road that is used for the cars, and it's also used for passenger, it does happen in Japan too. But in this case, the covering is usually asphalt or concrete with traffic signs. It will never look like this. The road will not be covered in this way, so I was surprised to see this. It's a small detail, but it was a big surprise for me. And one example in Japan is Heiwa Street in Asahikawa, Hokkaido Island in Japan. So this was 50 years ago, and I understand this was a national state road. Now it's completely open to pedestrian. It was a big decision, successful decision, to create spaces or places. And this is a very happy coincidence for me. In the same year, 1972, this is Curitiba in Brazil. In this year, this street was still full of cars, and they transformed this street, as you can see in this photograph. I suppose you had to close down the street suddenly, which was a big decision. Maybe it doesn't really align with the consensus forming. But anyway, the idea is creating these places, and afterwards you can get the consensus. And this is what the street looks like right now. If you pay attention closely, you can spot some cars. So these streets cross the street for pedestrians. But as you can see, the traffic light cycle is very short. And the distance that the pedestrians can walk is quite long. So you need to wait sometimes for the cars to cross, but the waiting time is minimal, and it doesn't really bother the pedestrians from walking, enjoying the walk. I believe that places can exist outside of streets. For example, public facilities such as City Hall, and plazas and squares, stations and terminals, and even bus stops can provide public places. They play very important roles in terms of providing public places. This is the City Hall Plaza in Munich, and the City Hall looks very impressive, but we really envy that there is such great public space as a plaza in front of the City Hall. This is an example of Seoul. Left top photograph is maybe too small for you to see, but this was many car lanes, and they transformed it into a huge plaza like this. You can see many people walking in the plaza, And by regulating the traffic lights, they managed to minimize the traffic jam and still secure this space for pedestrians. And I visited the city hall before this big plaza existed, and I can tell you that this was a major transformation. My co-worker, Kazuyo Sejima, world-renowned architect, designed this Hitachi Railway Station. And I took this picture from the ticket barrier of the station. There's a cafe with big glass windows, and you get a view of the Pacific Ocean. Really impactful architecture. And when we interview people, many people visit this station just to visit this cafe with a view of Pacific Ocean. So they're not necessarily taking the train ride. So I do feel sorry for those who are joining us from the Japan Railways today. But anyway, station providing this functionality can attract a big traffic. Foot traffic. This was a very impressive example. This is a photograph from Myanmar. I spent a long time there. And the circular railway in Yangon was established in 1959 by probably European engineers. And 2 railways, and in the urban area, they have a 3D crossing structure, very high quality, something that they would be very proud of. Now it's getting older, but in the 21st century, with the support of the Japanese government, some improvements have been made. And this is a station on the west side of this circular railway. Not many trains run on this track, but the station has been turned into a market. This kind of situation can be seen not only in Asia, but around the world. But this is another example of station creating the place for people. It goes without saying how important places are. When we discuss sustainability, there are 3 E's involved: environment, economy, and equity. And in all of these 3 perspectives, we have to think about sustainability. And I believe there is a strong connection between sustainability and having places. Safety and inclusiveness, societal inclusiveness, is supported by the existence of these places. And we talk about creativity of cities and towns. So chance, or coincidental meeting, serendipity, and culture are promoted because there are places. And I tend to include this next word in my slide all the time because we have a lot of natural disasters in Japan. But resilience. So if there is a disaster, we need a place to evacuate and also to help each other. Again, places play an important role there. In this era of accepting, embracing diversity, places again plays an important role. Synergistic effects and offsetting effects. In order to embrace diversity, well, I understand that sometimes you appreciate people who think the same way as you, but if we have diversity, sometimes 1 + 1 can turn into 3 instead of 2. And -1 + -1 would not turn into -2, but maybe end up being -0.5. In other words, diversity is extremely important. But in order to implement or realize all the different concepts and put them into practice, it is very important for us to have public places. And there are many challenges in terms of designing these places. In terms of transport, for example, universal and multimodal access is important. So I use the word multimodal. I have been researching transport many years, and Professor Akira Nakamura gave me a very kind introduction. But I realized that I'm not really focused on public transport or bus only. I'm focused on multimodal aspect of transport, meaning that there are different options, and bus is one of the options that you can choose from. If a place can only be accessed by car, that is not really good enough. Multiple modes of transport should be accessible to access that place, including buses. And we will talk about some public transports later, but we have to recognize the role that these public transport plays. Variety of staying styles is also emphasized, and also I have to mention the risk management, considering the time that we live in. Now let's look at the public transport that I've just mentioned.
So, in terms of the Mars, or we have been influenced by that and we're doing various activities for the past several years. But when doing the discussion about various transport, then what is public transport? We need to consider. I mean, it's not may not be an important topic, but we need to consider. And this is a mapping of different transport. Horizontal axis from large vehicles to the smaller vehicles, but the vertical axis is how easily access, or some of them require contracting, and so how easy, I mean, and easy to use. So, but then you can, some of them you just need to register, but then you can use it very easily afterwards. And in Japan, according to the MLIT ministry, when doing the public transport, the transportation business, the bus, taxi, and truck is the transporting cargo, and bus and taxi transport the passengers. So the passenger transport is included here, but if you look at the vertical axis, it requires register and or contracting those ride-hailing and bike, the so-called hires, and those coach or hired services or rental car services. Well, between the car rentals and car share services, there are some differences, but either you would need to register, and sometimes some steps are required. Are they public transport? But they are not, probably. But from the user's viewpoint, it's not a part of the transport business, but there are some of them are public aspects as well in terms of bike share and so on. So on the road, these public transport, it can negotiate. But in Europe, especially in the International Transport Association, they find this in such definition in talking about Mars in Europe. So the rented or for hired coach or bus, it's quite complicated if you think about this. But in case of the producing places and those, if you think of the transport to go there, it's these type of things on the top can be redefined as the public transport mainly. And conventionally, as a solution to resolve the traffic congestions and also safety and having the sufficient capacity, especially for the commuting purposes, and also obviously these are all important, but then have been focusing on these points. But what if we may change the different words by mitigating the traffic congestions, then we can just pack all the people. And obviously the safety is obviously utmost critical aspect. But in the regular viewpoint, now we have the different, we don't really have the different viewpoints here, but I think these are the subject to some discussion. But maybe more accurate thinking, maybe. So they don't have no deficit, and in Japan that is the biggest. And then when you think about the making no deficit in doing the operation, and obviously you need to think about the efficiency is very important, and the higher efficiency transport. Of course, I'm not going to negate this, but in case of public transport, however, from the user's perspective, that they can choose the mode of travel and then freedom of travel, and you can feel the freedom. And that there are some challenges with such assumptions, or from the user's perspective. 4 years ago or so, with the IAT's work, working with other professors and doctors, I have made the presentations, and I've been continuing to use the same presentation. What the public transport should aim in the current trend or thinking, people need to be able to walk to the stations or bus stops and so on. And also it has to be reliable, where the people can trust and be proud of and quite boastful, and they can enjoy the train stations and bus stops and also enjoy the inside the vehicle as well. So this is in Yokohama, Isogo, National Roadway number 16. There are 4-lane road, and then there's a student who is a little bit thinner than me, but he only have the walking in Yokohama City. We have a lot of places like for a very narrow pedestrian walk, and it is not. It's. I think we have to think about the safety first, because it's not really a question of walkable or not, because it's difficult to walk. But it's finally they managed to put the guardrail, but it's not really walkable. And then it's a Bientin Laos, and there's a parking lot. There's a pavement for the pedestrians, but now it's used as a parking. In Singapore, this is there's a connection to there are many things that once even if there's a school, they can hide. Also, there's a sunshade, and in such example as well, good example in BRT services, in the public transport, credibility is very important. But for example, I like the Jakarta BRT very much. I love it, but in some technical reasons, with the one bus just close in the morning rush hour, they just close the door very quickly, so that people have to wait. For many of people have to wait in the bus station, and there are students who are waiting for here in the bus station. As long as I remember, I had to wait for 1 hour to get onto the bus. So even if it's making the exclusive lane, it's not so useful. They have to wait. Going back to Japan, in Himeji Castle, in front of the castle, it's only for the bus and taxi only. And that's a very enjoyable space at the station. And it's very enjoyable space at the surrounding train station, and that is very good. And I started running out of time, so I'm going to the more second part. So with the meaning of the public transport and connecting with walkables and then systems and the subjective and the reliability need to be connected. And based on that, when I like to think about these points, because this is what should public transport carry is a question. And what is public transport carrying? And it could be passengers or cargoes or things. But in Tokyo, if you live in Tokyo for a long time, then in the morning and evening rush hour, and commuting is the main system, and the system is considered for that reason. And thanks to that, we can commute by using public transport in Japan, in Tokyo. But then there may be other abuse on mobility or transport, because the trips with thrilling and reverberation, I'm not really sure this is the right English word, but more enjoyable and exciting transport that we should be proud of. One can walk and you can enjoy such a transport, then it can bring the sense of excitement, and you can enjoy sort of after effect, and that is very important, I think. And this, for example, this is the cyclist's dream, so cyclist paradise in Bogota, Colombia. From 7 a.m. for 7 hours, it is only bicycles only. So this is like a bicycle paradise in Bogota on Sundays every week from 7 to 2 p.m. So the fathers and others are really enjoying this bicycle rides. I couldn't get a good picture, but this is the only picture I had. But it was a 6 lanes vehicle only road is turned into the bicycle paradise on Sundays in Bogota, and there are a lot of bus are used in bus terminals, in suburban bus terminals. There are always plaza there, and there's also a warehouse for the buses, but they use it, in the bus system, they have always a mechanism like this, and this is the such.
They call it Culture Fridays. At the terminal, which is in a suburban area, they use this big plaza designed after bus terminal, and they conduct some kind of event every Friday, which is quite impressive. I have not been able to visit here Friday evening, so I don't have any photographs. I do apologize. But similar efforts are being made in Germany and France as well. This is Freiburg. And this photograph was given to me by the PR department of the city. You can see so many different people spending time there, and I actually took a picture of the same place. So depending on the time, depending on the weather, situation is different, but you can see many people enjoying themselves. This is Cheonggyecheon, river built in 2004. 16 lanes were here. Now they have rebuilt it into a waterfront area or plaza. This is impressive on two fronts. In order to reduce the number of lanes, they had to do a lot of policy-related measures. For example, regulating the traffic and also building more parking space, and the change in the modal shift, investment into buses and undergrounds, and increased pedestrian areas. So many things happened behind this. So now they have reduced from 16 to 4 lanes, and they have managed. And this looks like an old river, but this is actually area where they adjust the rainwater. It is highly controlled. If there is torrential rain in the mountain area, if they can predict that in advance, they can evacuate the area and use this whole space as water storage in order to avoid and prevent flooding in the urban area. So many things are thought out at the same time. It is truly remarkable. The city center should provide the function of culture and creativity. And my team members did a lot of research, and some papers are written about the fact that access to these activities enhance well-being of people. Theaters, watching sports, if you go to the stadium, to the theater, people's sense of well-being is improved and enhanced. And the access can be provided by walking or by public transport. This means that people can enjoy the space more, and also they can drink alcohol if they wish. It is beneficial on many different levels. So trips, movements support lifestyle and attract the lifestyle. It increases well-being, and people start to enjoy the transportation or movement themselves. And we need to increase more opportunities where people can enjoy themselves walking and taking public transport. While I was working on this project and the COVID-19 pandemic started, people stopped going out. And there are many ideas now how to bring the public back to the public spaces. The way we live, the way we use the digital technology, everything is changing, transforming. By walking and also keeping social distance and also using public transport, we need to create opportunities where people can enjoy themselves. Public transport management is running deficit. Management is difficult. So if we can work on this, it will help the business management of these public transports. Now, safety and the smoothness are important, but multiple values is important. People enjoy things in different ways, sometimes slowly, sometimes with a view, sometimes alone quiet, sometimes sharing with others, sometimes being thrilled, sometimes enjoying the reverberation in the space. And maybe we can create more places and devise or be more creative about ticketing with the station, with the vehicles. I think I have a little bit more time left. With regard to new technologies, this is what Professor Peter Jones has taught me. Data has definitely changed. We now have access to big data, high-quality data, and also deep data. If we want to lean into this, then we should really focus on diagnosis, validation, and evaluation. And new technology can provide us with a support in terms of validation of what we're trying to do. Another idea is that the new technology can support visioning. Of course, creativity and wisdom and efforts are required to visualize the future. And maybe we can utilize metaverse and create this future and appraise and conduct demonstration projects in the physical realm as well. We can do so many things depending on how we can utilize the data, and this underlies the new technologies. There are so many things that we want to think about of the future, but I think some of the key points are laid out here. If we have more shared services, it means that we'll have more options of traveling. I'm involved in many new types of autonomous technologies. But in terms of the context of this presentation today, the vehicles, cars themselves, need to be more attractive. And new services and products need to be created, and they need to become more visible. With regard to mass, comprehensive information as well as a payment system for the whole region or the community should be available. I think it will help disseminate information to people who had no idea that such information existed. We can do so many things on smartphones as well. For example, after visiting the theater, maybe you can use the same ticket that you used to visit the theater to travel in an unlimited manner. So this is also possible with technology. Mobility services, we have the conventional mode, now we have new services, and we can connect these different pieces, active travels and solutions for mobility. And this can provide solutions for other policy fields as well. And it will also enable marketing and evaluation. Now, mass is not limited to the way people talk about that right now. So this is the conclusion. Movement, trips are important, places are important, and public transport plays an important role. And beyond that, we can think about mobility in terms of value creation, and new technologies can help in terms of validation and visioning of the future transportation. Mobility sometimes is translated as a mode of transport, but I use a different translation here for Japanese. Of course, collaboration is important, and value creation is important. Walking and cycling need to be emphasized more, and beyond that, we can expect reliable and enjoyable public transport, enabling option for modality and freedom of mobility. And this also is connected to validation and visioning. A place for access is important, or accessibility to the place is important. And by doing all of these different things together, we can create attractive and sustainable city with a new era mobility. That concludes my presentation. And I do apologize about all the coughing, but thank you very much for your kind attention.
皆様お待たせいたしました。
Thank you for waiting. Now we'd like to resume the session. And if you are listening in the Zoom, if you have questions, at the bottom of your screen, from Q&A button, please make sure to write to whom you are addressing the questions. And also, of course, we may not be able to answer all the questions. Thank you very much. Now, we'd like to start the panel discussion now. First, we'd like to introduce our panelists from Dr. Bimsk Sanit. Dr. Zan Elfading. Dr. Zan Elfading. Dr. Vincent Yumi Fuji. Coordinator of today's program is the speaker who have just spoken, Dr. Fumihiko Nakamura, who will address this. I will be the coordinator for this panel discussion. So Dr. Sanit will speak in English. So please, if you want to listen to Japanese, please use the simultaneous interpretation receiver. For distribution, please just you can listen to in Japanese if you're in the Japanese channel. So Dr. Nakamura, please. Thank you. And then, sorry for speaking remotely, but with my voices maybe not sounding so great, but thank you for attending this panel discussion. And in this panel discussion, these three panelists, and you may think that'd be less number of panelists, and there are also overseas panelists as well, and that is quite unique characteristics. And with the smaller number of people, we can do a very good discussion. And hope to have some slow time in doing discussion, since I am like this. So, but please, I'd like to apologize for being like this. But how we can proceed in each of the panelists, I will present first very briefly. That is the first round. The second round will be in regards to the presentations. In each, we'd like to. There may be topics like in how they're doing the living under COVID-19 as a citizen, and also to talk about the transport and traffic in each respective country. So first speaker, I'd like to invite Dr. Bimsk Sanit. And as it has been introduced, Dr. Sanit will present in English, and for the people in the actual venue, and if you're the audience, please use the simultaneous interpretation receiver to listen to in Japanese. And for distribution, if you're listening in Japanese, there will be no problem. It will be automatically switched to Japanese channel, or Japanese translation. Thank you.
My name is Piam Suk,
はい、私の名前は
urban transportation planner and foresight researcher and lecturer from Chulalongkorn University, Thailand. My background is in geography. I graduated from the Doctor of Engineering from Yokohama National University, Japan. My specialization in urban and transportation planning with a focus on integrated urban land use planning, urban public transport, informal transport, and non-motorized transport infrastructure development. And my research and project mainly focus on urban mobility. Now I'm interested in the future study using strategic foresight. My latest research project is the study on the future of urban mobility using Bangkok and the major city in Thailand as a case study. Here is these are some of my interesting findings from my research. A study on future of urban mobility in Bangkok, focusing on the roles of motorcycle. Basically, all cities in Thailand, including Bangkok, are motorcycle city. 40% of the vehicles in Bangkok are motorcycles, not only for the transportation mode, but motorcycles are used for job opportunity for the low-income people. In the picture, you can see the motorcycle taxi driver and the ride-hailing service driver. Motorcycle taxi play an important role in urban mobility in Bangkok, functioning as the feeder mode supporting the mass transit system due to the superblock problem in Bangkok. In the future, the motorcycle use will increase significantly due to the mass transit development and also the rise of the digital economy. So in the future, motorcycle taxi should be integrated into the digital platform, following the concept of mobility as a service. And also the last mile delivery services, particularly for the food delivery service, have gained popularity in Thailand now. The riders are the gig workers. They play an important role in urban economic recovery during COVID. And also the motorcycle taxi driver function as the community reporter. In theoretical model describing the eye on street from the motorcycle taxi is the natural surveillance that can deter the crime. And another research, a study on the future of urban mobility in major city in Thailand, focusing on the role of public transport. Generally, there is no mass transit development outside Bangkok. All the city in Thailand now, they rely on the informal transport. The main public transport in this city is the informal transport or paratransit that provide a unique and flexible service. There are various types and forms of informal transport. In the picture, you can see the Song Thao, the ride-sharing pickup truck is used for sightseeing in the tourist city during peak time. And the informal transport is becoming more and more popular in Thailand now, functioning as the on-demand service. In the picture, you can see the application called MoveMe. The MoveMe provides the service, use the ride-sharing small vehicle EV, like a tuk-tuk, to serve the short-distance trip for the people in the neighborhood. It's become popular during COVID because of people, the fear of contagion of the COVID-19, so they need the on-demand service rather than the public transportation. So we can see that the informal transport in Thailand, it can be promoted to be a high potential public transportation in the medium-sized city. But now our government are planning to develop the mass transit system such as tram and LRT, light rail transit, in many major cities because they believe that mass transit system development is expected to aid urban economic recovery. And also, mass transit will revitalize the shopping street and promote the urban life, following the concept of TOD. So, and since there is a new technology, transportation technology emerging, such as autonomous and EV, so there are many challenges for public transportation development in Thailand in the future. That's all my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sanit. When I was working at the Yokohama University, she was studying there. She obtained her PhD there. And I remember her very many unique approaches. Motorcycle taxis and informal transportations, of course, they're not formal, they're informal, so there are many challenges, but you are identifying those challenges, and I'm looking forward to the discussion later. Thank you very much for your kind presentation. Moving on to Dr. Suzanne Alfading. If you're ready, please start. Yes, my name is Alfading. Thank you for this opportunity. Today, I would like to provide a different perspective about not just what kind of transport should be provided, but also what is being discussed in society within Germany, as well as within the city of Hamburg, where I'm from. I would like to start with a quick self-introduction. For a very long time, I've been spending time to support research between Japan and Germany. And also, I was doing a lot of research, but more recently, I have been supporting the administration. In other words, not just talk about things, but also I'm trying to contribute to change things, make things happen in the physical realm. Talking about Germany, I would like to start with our current status. Similar to many countries within Europe, population is concentrated in large cities within Germany. And especially among young population, there are many who are concerned about the climate change, and more people are concerned about that and what cities, how cities should change in response to that. Response for torrential rains is one. And the difference in Germany is that there is no one large city like Japan. So there is a stiff competition among different regions or smaller cities within Germany. In the past, the transportation was more focused on automobiles. And considering who it is available to, it is basically available to the working population. Adult with a job, with a certain amount of income. But children and elderly tend to rely on transport mode other than automobiles. Within the city of Hamburg, if you look at the transport shares, still, we do have roads dedicated to automobiles. So 36% of the traffic share is cars, both including driving as well as riding in somebody else's car. And other than that, we have walking, bicycles, and public transportation. And the political objective right now is before 2030, the traffic share of cars should be reduced to 20%, and the other types of mode of transport should be increased to 80% of the traffic share. If you think about where different participants are coming from, children would benefit the most from this change. Because in Germany, there is a big problem of mothers transporting their children back and from school, to and back from school. And because people are worried about sending the children in public transport, well, if we want to reduce automotive transportation, we need to provide public transport that is safe and easy to use. Aged and disabled would be able to lead more independent lives, benefiting from this change. Now, wheelchair access in Germany is not just for people with disability, but also we're considering other types of barriers. For example, if you have broken your leg and you're wearing a cast, or if you're carrying a big luggage, environment for these different types of people need to be improved. So people are starting to think about a wheelchair access or so-called barrier-free approach. As Professor Nakamura mentioned in his presentation, once people can live independent, autonomous lives, societal burden would also decrease. That is another aspect of this benefit that is expected. Last but not least, within Germany, there is an active discussion about automotive-centric cities. Who is this city built for? Well, it's mostly for so-called male travelers, because men tend to drive to the city center, commuting to work, or they tend to use the public transport and visit the city center and then return home. This is a very typical male travel pattern. And urban planning in the past was basically dedicated to that. So the public transport and roads were basically in a radial format, hub and spokes. But if you think about so-called female travel patterns, they tend to work or move with the elderly or children. They also would go shopping based on the conventional definition of roles between males and females. Traditional female roles tended to travel within the smaller community, and it's not necessarily convenient according to the current design. Of course, the society is changing, and also the gender roles are not as clearly defined as in the past. If you go to Germany today, there are many males out there who are taking care of the children and also parents, and also there are many women out there who are commuting to work every day. But economy-centric and also commuting to the office-centric urban design is already old. We need to move away from that and create a city that is convenient for every participant. So within Hamburg and in other cities, public transport and bicyclings are now being revisited as better opportunities. And for existing roads, the space of the road is now redefined and resplit, allocating more space for the pedestrians. And whenever a new urban area or suburban area is developed, they try to provide everything within the small community, including recreation, walking, and other societal aspects. They try to create more compact cities and towns. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elfading. So the last slide, the men and women. I can understand in that way, what the traffic transport is for whom, and that is the thing that we need to consider and think about it. And for everyone, I understood her purpose or she was trying to say. I understand her presentation very well. Thank you very much. Now the third speaker is Ms. Banson Yumi Fuji. So please go ahead and start. Good afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Banson Fuji Yumi. And then let me introduce myself. And I will talk about I have to talk about the cities and mobility in France. Japanese cities are wonderful. The public transport infrastructure is great, but unfortunately, if you go to regional cities, it is quite difficult to see the people, and you may see that not so many people are on the street. In France, it's also a vehicle society, but we introduce public transport in France to vitalize the cities and the urban area. In 1990s, we have introduced LRT since 1990s and 2000s to have we have received in France the Civil Work Award of the Cultural Ministry, and also for this in 2016 in the French regional cities that was the transport that was also published this paper as well. In 2000, however, in France, the 300,000 people in France also began introducing public transportation and metro communities, and now LRT are being developed in 31 cities, as you can see in the picture. So now the central city area of Angers, as you can see in the picture. Since 2000 to 2020s, we have started to see the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit development in 41 cities, and local governments with population with less than a smaller number of population cities now actively running fixed routes buses using BRT. So even in a smaller village, now they have the better transport. And in France, why the childbearing generations are trying to move to the countryside in France. So with this France, however, there's what kind of the new urban development and mobility environment in the post-COVID-19 era. So I'll talk about the 15-minute city and walkable city, MaaS, and the smart city. Those are keywords I want to use in my presentation. 15-minute city means you have all the walkable urban environment to do all the city things to do in the city within 15 minutes walking. And as you may know, in France, we did have a very severe, strict lockdown. You cannot walk. You can only walk within 1 kilometer from your house. So this 1 kilometer is only about 15 minutes. That is why 15-minute city concept is now getting the more sufficient ground among us citizens. And before COVID-19, in 2019, we had a regional general election, and the mayor of Paris have talked about this manifesto in his candidate for the mayor, have talked about the 15-minute city concept. If you go to Paris, in a very promoting innovative reallocation of road space in Paris, it's not only for the cars, but it's for the micromobility and the also public transport exclusive lane, and then also combined with the vehicles and with the shared of use of the road space and pedestrians. So there's a local governments, the public entity to move these operations. So use of public transportation led by local government and promoted by mass, and to provide the mass transit is now easy to be provided. As a mass, the public transport is now being used in such a way. When we talk about mobility in France, it's not just a means of transport, but it has the diversified potentials in the transportations. And also using Mars, and then as one of the smarter city, not the social, now implementation of smart city has been started, is the vision of the 260,000 population in a smart city has actually started to implement it since 2019. And the collective, such as public proofs and so on, all these living functions in the city, as you can see, in the Mutual Control Center are already doing the smart city operations. As you can see, the map in the blue, red-blue is the already introduced smart city implementation sites, and the 15-minute city concept is by the red. So in other words, it is many of them overlaps. So with the city policies and urban policies and the mayors or city councilmen, not the vertical, but rather more horizontally, they are deploying these smart city initiatives implemented and 15-minute city concept being actually implemented. So having the more mobility policy has been established from that. And also among them, that's the transportation policies and cultural policies also improve the urban population health, and that they're focusing on the cultural policies as well to make the urban cities. And in France, with this reallocation of the urban space, background for that in terms of system, the urban policy to secure the human resource by the local governments and politicians, and also to development, binding master plan and planning. And we need the planning for that. We need to have the very matched urban development is necessary, and that system is ready for that. But also from the citizens' viewpoint, environmental preservation consciousness for the environmental conservation, high public awareness, and top priority pedestrians and road traffic safety. And with safety in focus, by spending the public money to develop the urban cities, there are the consensus from citizens, and also laws with the citizen participation are also guaranteed in the social solidarity as well. As you can see in these pictures, in the past, there are a lot of cars were the center in the major regional cities, and now you can see that they eliminate all those vehicles and cars. It is human-centered, walkable, and enjoyable city that has been developed into. That is the to achieve such a mid-sized regional cities, and with less number of automobiles, it's a sustainable development city, and the image and also the views that are provided to the citizens. That concludes my presentation. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vincent Fujiyumi. I have read all of your books, and you've been delivering important messages from Japan, giving us ideas about what we need to think about in Japan. You have covered everything all the way to smart city, and now you're talking about human resource development, consensus building, and decision making, and giving us specific challenges, ideas about different challenges. because of COVID-19 pandemic, the situation has maybe slowed down. But if you know the past and look at the present, I'm sure that it's probably more enjoyable. Now, we have allocated sufficient time for the panel discussion. And for the first round, I would like to ask straightforward questions about the presentations given by the panelists. And for the second round, there are many changes that we have been talking about for a while. But in the last 3 years, during the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, people had to prioritize the countermeasures against infections. And also, like I'm on Zoom today, we have seen a lot of technological advancements. And people, companies, as well as transport operators may have maybe changed their way of thinking. What do you think is the biggest change that we have seen because of COVID-19 pandemic? That will be the second round of questions. And the third round of questions will be related to some of the keywords. I think we can go 4 rounds because we have enough time. But for the third round of question, I would like to ask, if you think about passenger cars, as I mentioned in my presentation, what do you think is the role of passenger vehicles in the future? Because there'll be more opportunities for people not to use the cars, and including cargo transportation and fire engines and other purposes. I think the technology of the vehicle will further advance, but we want to redefine the role of the passenger vehicles and cars in the future. Now, Dr. Everding and Dr. Vanson talked about the same thing: environment, social welfare, education. We are facing some challenges in these areas. But today we are focusing on the theme of traffic culture creating value, as the president of the organization mentioned. So we're not just talking about providing solutions to problems. We're talking about adding positive values to transportation. And I believe that that will lead to the different perspectives, including environment, social welfare, education, and many other aspects. How can we create value through mobility? So that would be the fourth round of the questions. I do apologize that this is different from what we briefed you on, but since we have enough time for the discussion, and this is a great opportunity, welcoming 3 wonderful panelists, we would like to leverage your insights and wisdom as much as possible. So let's start with the first round. This is an easy one. Dr. Sanet, you talked about motorcycles and pickup truck, Sontail. Shape of the Sontail put aside. Well, we're talking about small-sized vehicles, small-sized cars. And many people think this is just a small bus. But Sontail is utilized in different regions throughout Thailand. What do you think about the future of Sontail? And also, when you talk about informal transportation, informal often has a negative connotation when people use the word informal. But in this case, is it a negative meaning? If it is a negative meaning, if that is the case, can we turn it into a positive? I just wanted to understand the meaning of informal. So please start with the future of Sontail.
Okay, for my question, Nakamura Sensei asking me about the future of the informal transportation. Okay, particular for the future of like song tail and motorcycle taxi. Now the situation of using this kind of transportation mode is decreased because of the poor service, right? Informal transport mean not well organized and controlled by the government. So they don't fix time and fix route. So actually they have a positive impact because of such a kind of service we can call the on-demand. But because of the poor organization, so we cannot control the price. So now the number of passengers for informal transport is decreasing, particularly during the COVID, right? So even the mass transit system in Bangkok, also the number of passengers is decreasing now. So to make it more attractive, maybe we need the new technology like a big data to control the service. So the idea of mobility as a service maybe is the alternative. So now the private company, they start thinking about the on-demand service that using small vehicle. So they said that the Song Tao, maybe they have the high potential to promote at a shuttle bus because of the trend of the in the Thai society in the same situation with Japan. Now we are in the aging society, so a lot of people that with the limit of the mobility. So and Song Tao maybe the cheap price than the mass transit. So in the future, if the government they pay attention more about the informal transport and like a formalization or the informal transport into the formal transport and promote it as the feeder mode in Bangkok to support mass transit system, like a make integrated or the public transportation mode in terms of the travel cost. Because now the different mode may be different cost. So the more you use the mode, you pay higher. So maybe, and comparing to Bangkok, medium-sized city now, they don't have the mass transit, so they rely on the informal transport so much. So better than we invest the big investment for the rail transit in the medium-sized city. So the informal transport like a Song Tao is very high potential, right? Because it's a small vehicle that fit with the demand of the people that want to travel with their group, right? During the COVID, the people, they have a fear of contagion. So they prefer a small vehicle for particular group better than the big vehicle that a lot of people that share with their trip. So in the future, so if we can utilize the data and also formalization, the informal transport that will organize and integrated all the mode in the city, so maybe the situation of car using in Thailand is maybe will be better situation. And next step, and we start thinking about to promote like a non-motorized and like a pedestrian city. So the first step, we should like improve the quality of the public transportation first. And I think informal transport is very high potential for our city.
Thank you very much for your comments. Thank you. When it is said informal, we are worried. I would worry about insurance, maybe not belonging to the insurance coverage, or maybe not paying the taxes. That's the aspect that But in overcoming those challenges, but I think that Sontel has a good potential. I understand that the Sontel has a very good potential, huge, large potential, and I think that's a part of the Mars using the data and to provide the service and the information and to be bundled together as a Mars, and that can link to that. It's very interesting, I think. Thank you. And in a classical way of thinking, traditionally, informal transport is not good, or that people often say that, but it's no longer the case. And by use of new technology, it can transform such the informal transport, and it would be helpful for the people who don't have access to the transport as well. And I think we come to understand that. It was very good. Thank you very much for your comment. Thank you. Next, I'd like to ask a question to Dr. Elfading. Well, especially in talking about the commuting to school, going to school in European countries and also in Japan, and what I heard in Laos, that is the challenging and difficult. So on one hand, the security, because of security issues, to be transported using the cars or vehicles, automobiles to transport the kids to school, but then you'll be too much congestion in the schools. So therefore, it is people don't want to walk too much, and many things are happening in the transporting. But in your location, perhaps in the city you live, or other city example is fine. But Dr. Elfading, in case of the elementary school children, and are there any innovative tips or innovative ideas? Or maybe it may be obvious, very obvious things, but if there's any city is using that well in innovative ideas, in overcoming the challenge and issue of the instead of using the automobiles for kids or children transporting to school. Well, thank you for your question. In case of going to schools, we have to think about several issues. One of them is the road traffic or automobile traffic is increased. And then because the parents use cars, automobile to transport, and that could happen in accident and very dangerous things. I'm sure you may have heard or experienced that kind of danger by using automobiles. If you think of the kids, then if you use cars, then they don't learn the ability to find their own way and they don't acquire that skill, because if they are just being sent away by the parents to drive to the school. So that is why it's to be independent. I think it's important for kids to learn such an ability and skills. And there are many different ideas on this point. One of that is the communication. For example, we focus on the school, then let's walk, everyone. It may be the case, or everyone may walk, or people may do that almost like a game. For example, making almost like a big poster at schools. So in every class, or when they have the group, how much they have actually walked, how much they have ridden on the bicycles, and that can be written in that big poster. And with the longest distance student or the class who would receive an award for walking the longest distance and so on. And then through the children, because it could also communicate to their parents as well. Because in Germany, the education is dealt by each state or the provincial governments. So therefore, we have the Niedersachsen in Germany. That is one of the states, and there, these public transport, but not the public but it's mobility educations. In other words, you need to think about your own mobility means and mode, and which one is better, which one has less impact on the environmental issues, and those need to be considered by the students and in their learning. I mean, it's also part of these different subjects because we don't have the transportation education subject, no. However, when they put the vehicles and it can calculate how much space it would take in case of music lesson of the subject, interviewing the adults and why they would use the vehicle or automobile, and how people would change their mode of transport to the non-automobile use. And then in the science or the art lessons, in which way is easier to see. So those type of new innovative, because traffic safety and traffic volume and mobility choice need to be considered. And that is what the people are trying to do. And the students are also trying to do for the adults as well. Thank you. Thank you for your comment. In case of mobility education, is not in that particular subject, but it would also link to all kinds of subjects. That's very wonderful, I think. And if we have an opportunity, definitely I think we can do those kind of projects in years as well in our association. In Japan, mobility management for the elementary school children education and also middle school education, that the traffic safety is one of the important topics. And for the there are some examples of the link with the elementary schools or the middle schools, and if the Shizuoka Prefecture schools has been awarded some award for that. But in case, as she mentioned about the mobility, and that linked to the various kind of subjects, and then ultimately speaking, that would help the children or students to be independent and autonomously. And that is quite a good aspect, I think. Thank you very much for your comment. Now, I would like to ask Dr. Vanson or Ms. Vanson Fuji, in doing the communication, in thinking about this, if you talked about 15-minute city, walkable city, and that is quite meaningful, I think. For example, well, in one day, the 15 minutes per one day, that's one way of thinking this. But also, in France, starting from Paris, however, this 15 minutes walkable city is not 30, no, 45, but rather no 5 or 10, but rather it looks like it's running at 15 minutes intervals. Is that correct understanding? And also, in the past, when I was a student, I've learned that anybody who only have 24 hours only, so out of 24 hours, sleep the 8 hours, then what we can spend on the mobility or the transport is quite less. But there are a lot of people who are commuting in for 2 hours. That means they're spending 4 hours per day on commuting. And in case of the time management, and that is the time management is a very important topic. But 15 minutes is the more progress. How should we understand the 15-minute city concept in France? Understand it better. Originally, this 15-minute city concept was done in 2016, long before the COVID-19. The urban scientists and urban planning have talked about this in University of Paris. And before 2016, in the U.S. Portland, in a town called Portland, 20 minutes neighborhood was mentioned in Portland. Within the neighborhood, they can live within 20 minutes. And such a city or town that they want to establish. And that was already announced in 2000s. However, in terms of timing in France, 15-minute city concept was announced in 2016. And then in 2020, with the election that became as a manifesto by Paris mayor candidate and Paris mayor. And then we had the lockdown by COVID-19, and with the only 1 kilometer moving was continued under lockdown. When people thought about, in the past, the using public transport or using the automobiles to do the commuting or going to schools, but now with due to remote work, now they're spending more time on at home, and then we think about this urban environment and also living environment at their homes. In other words, these cities and local governments, is it quite attractive? Do we have the parks, and do we have that the children can walk safely on the road, and that to be arranged as such.
So people started questioning the functions of the cities and towns around 2020 and 2021. And in France and other countries, people are already talking about the fact that people prefer to work from home even after the pandemic. Many people not wanting to go back to the office. As Professor Nakamura said, if you allocate a lot of time, long time, to mobility, well, rather than that, if you can reallocate that time to something else, your life would be more fulfilling. And that is another driver behind the philosophy of a 15-minute city. Professor Morel also talks about that. So you asked, why is this becoming more of a reality in France right now? Well, it's the question of timing. Because of the pandemic, people experienced city lockdowns, and they started to take a closer look at the living environment of their own cities and towns. Yes, I understand that clearly. It was basically happening during the process of COVID-19. Well, time goes more quickly than I expected, but let's go to the second or the next round of the questions. Since the COVID-19 pandemic started, in each of your respective countries, well, Ms. Vansen, you can talk about France and also other countries if you like. And Professor Sanit also talked about this, but after the 3 years of COVID-19 pandemic, what do you think was the biggest change in your country? What did you learn? What is the biggest transformation you saw because of COVID-19 pandemic over the last 3 years? Let's go around the table again, starting with Dr. Sanit.
And the next question, we focus on the effect of the COVID outbreak to our daily life. Yes, we already know that the pandemic outbreak have caused unexpected change in our daily life and require individual to adapt to a new way of living. So the biggest change in Thai society may be about the food trip. So let me explain a little bit. So before we first introduction about the mass transit system 20 years ago, the people, they rely on the car. So the car dependency in Bangkok and also other city in Thailand is very high. The one important trip for Thai people is the food trip, right? So in other city, like in Japan, they have a 2 peak hour, morning peak and evening peak. But in Thai city, we have 3 peak time, including the lunchtime peak hour, because people, they enjoy to drive a car to seeking for the food. But after we first introduced the first train line in Bangkok 20 years ago. So the young generation, they change the way of life because of the high vertical living. They grow up in the condominium. So they don't need to buy a car and buy a house. They rent the condominium with a small room, and they enjoy sharing economy. They are gig worker. But the thing that not changed before COVID, that the food trip is also important for the young generation, right? They spend the time with the lunch time outside the office building. So, but after COVID-19, so as we know, they have a lockdown measure that limit our mobility, except the food trip, right? So in Bangkok, we survive from the food delivery service. Food delivery service has a great change for people. In the lunchtime now, we can observe that young people in the city central, maybe for the job center, maybe they spend much time in the office building during lunchtime because of the new technology. So we can order the food from outside to delivery to our office, and people, they enjoy to cooking. So maybe the lunchtime peak hour in Bangkok now become better now, but the car using increase now because of the afraid of the contagion. So the number, as I mentioned, the number of the train passenger is decreased. But the situation that changed about the food trip, so the new generation, so they start using the application. They are gig worker. They can work somewhere in the co-working space nearby the train station. Now, as Susan mentioned, the people, they want to work from home, right? So the work trip in the peak time may be decreased from the past. But the car using for Thai people, it increased now. So it is the big challenge for the train company to think about how to make the train transit maybe more attractive. But the way of life, so some scholars said that the impact of COVID maybe will last in the long run. So some behavior that already changed, maybe it will change forever. So maybe for Thai people, the situation about the car dependency may be getting better, maybe after we launch the first train operation. But after COVID, maybe the situation getting worse. Right? But for the new generation, we have a hope that because they grow up with the train, TOD concept maybe affect their life. As I mentioned, they enjoy to live in the condominium, don't want to buy a car anymore. So maybe the concept of public transportation should be redefined. As I mentioned, maybe the type of vehicle should be small and maybe the service as on demand. But the trunk line, like a mass transit, is also important. And the small bus, like a shuttle bus, that service on demand can be like a feeder mode, support the mass transit and operate as a mass mobility as a service platform. So this is the idea of Bangkok for the impact of the COVID-19, particularly for the young generation, that will be the next generation that will be make a clear future for our society.
Thank you. Okay. You covered everything from food and also perspective of a younger generation, and you also summarized the discussion. Some impacts will be long-lasting, and some impacts will maybe recover more quickly. So I think there are varying degrees, but I understand the similarities. Thank you. Dr. Elfating? I think the trend has been quite similar. COVID-19 pandemic transformed people's lifestyles. In the beginning, people were afraid to meet others, and working from home increased all of a sudden. People were trying to minimize the situations where they had to meet others. Now the fear has subsided to some extent. And people are beginning to really want to meet people face to face in order to run the business smoothly, for example. But when asked, do you want to commute every day? Most of the people would say no, not really. So most of the governments, municipalities, and the companies in Germany are trying to ask their workers to come to the office twice a week. And other than that, they can work from home. In terms of working from home, people can focus and process a lot of work at home. And if they need to communicate, they can go to the office. And I think this is basically part of how the society works. And also the way of shopping has changed.
Of course, every day, the food that people consume every day will be bought in the supermarket, but they may go to markets directly to buy the food. However, there are items, for example, clothing and shoes, are nowadays bought through the internet. And therefore, especially in the central area, shopping malls impacting significantly to the shopping stores. In the large cities, in relatively less. But if you go to smaller regional cities in France, in Germany, that is often the case. But is that a new trend? But actually not, because of the way people, different from the way to work. But this central part of the city is sort of weakening, is now the trend we already had since a long time ago. But that trend has become even stronger. Due to COVID-19, we couldn't do the traveling. We have 16 states in Germany, but it was prohibited to the adjacent states in Germany, so that it understand the good aspect of the re-experiencing the neighbors and in your neighbors and in your local area. And also very rich areas, we have a lot of parks and you can play. However, in the less rent where it is not good residential area, there'll be shortage of parks in those poorer area. So therefore, urban planning and in regards to space, the concepts has been started to change due to COVID-19. Also, furthermore, if we think about transportation, just like shopping, in the past, the trend has already existed for some time and now becoming stronger. For example, if you go to Hamburg, for example, in case of Hamburg, there are two circular lines. The internal circular lines is the old city surroundings. However, the second circular line is further outer circular, but that is relatively outside of the dense populated area. If we think of the trend within the second circular area, traffic volume by cars has been significantly reduced. Especially we see the rise of the bicycles traffic, because the cities are focusing on the bicycle traffic and trying to make that infrastructure to be better or improved. What is it? Because there are many users of the bicycles, we have to catch up with so many usage of the bicycles these days. So under such trend, there are more people getting on the bicycles, and then due to the COVID-19, that trend has become stronger because people would move outside. It's good for the health, and that is a perception people have, and that is also good because people have more walking, and also bicycles are the major mode of transportation nowadays. Then what about the public transport? Then was empty, and because everybody was afraid of getting in contact with the strangers and was getting infected with COVID-19. But based on that, in some regional cities have different way of addressing the COVID-19 issue. In some state of Germany, the numbers of public transport have been significantly reduced because they have to think about their profits, and then therefore they have to stop that and operating of that in some cities. But in the public transport, some people are using the public transport. And for example, people who work in the hospitals are using public transport. That's the work they have to go. And all of a sudden, public transport is gone. There are people who would be troublesome. But in case within the city of Hamburg, however, in the number of users have been reduced, but then they kept the frequency. And they actually increased the frequency of buses because people in Germany, they want to get the distance with the social distance with others, so therefore they want to feel secure. That's why they have. It's better to increase the space, the frequency of the buses. But today, now we are going to get back to the pre-COVID-19 states, but then that's also coming from the other element. And today, because of the energy cost is increasing so much, and in order to reduce such energy cost and more conditional response, is the automobile movement is too strong, and we have to, even though there are politicians who want to support the moves by the automobiles, but now the society, people have stopped that. Why, if you're going to make the automobile better, then we have to have the public transport better. As a result of this discussion or debate, in Germany, for all the short distance public transport is now can be used in supplying the fuels. And that's wonderful things. And you can use the from the northern part of the just by the 9 euros from the northern part of Germany to all the way down to the southern part of Germany. So a lot of people started to use more public transport, even though COVID-19 was not completely finished. It's okay to use public transport, but it was very well received among citizens. So in the future, I think from spring next year, for 1 month, paying 49 euro to use the short distance 49 euro pass may be introduced next spring to be able to travel in the short distance public transport as much as you like. And this monthly pass, I do have the monthly pass, and that now going to become the half the price. So I feel quite a good value for us. So it is quite fortunate because thanks to the social debate and 9 euro ticket, which covers all over Europe, all over Germany rather, and the public transport, and that's going to be very interesting development that we can expect to see. Thank you very much for your comment. Thank you, especially for the last part. You talked about 9 euro. That was quite strong impact, and I was quite surprised to hear that 9 euro ticket. I don't know if it's the same thing can be achieved in Japan or not, and maybe we need to do some discussion on that. But what is important, however, is as the Dr. Elfadin mentioned, from the society, versus vehicles and public transport, and the public transport is considered, and as prior to that, the walking and bicycle has been well explained in a very easy to understand manner. So, and that was very explained, very easy to understand manner. So I'm not going to repeat what she says, but it is very understood very well. Thank you. And what was quite challenging, however, even with such large pressure, how do you utilize that pressure is an important challenge, and how we can resolve the current today's challenge is an important niche topic, I think. Now I'd like to ask Banson-san, with COVID-19 in French society, what has changed from French COVID-19? There are two major things from the COVID-19 impact in France. First, in the mobility, in the short distance between 5 or 8 kilometer moves, people have strong interest in that. As a result, just very relating to the 15-minute city to make the walkable environment, and with the being able to get the consensus from citizens, and in regional cities, local governments creating the walkable urban environment, and that is from the automobiles, and the parking lots are now being all converted into the pedestrian-only area. And those policies, and with the consensus of the people and citizens, have been now being achieved and can be easily much more achieved today. Actually, that is one of the things in regards to the moves and the change as such. Actually, in 2019 December, in France, we have the Mobility Basic Act was formulated, and that is immediately before COVID-19 establishment. As you know, in 1940, the traffic area, the traffic basic law that marks the 40 years, and the new mobility basic law was formulated.
基本法のキーワード And the keyword of this basic law is mobility for every day and everybody. In other words, it's mobility for every citizen on a day-to-day basis. And just by coincidence, TGV is for long-haul transport. And these big projects were invested by the central government, mostly. But going forward, regional railways connecting local cities, or improvement of roads, as well as urban transportation improvements, will be supported more going forward. In other words, not everybody drives, but this new law will support everybody's mobility. And through COVID-19 pandemic and experience of lockdown, people's ideas are reflected in this law. By the way, in terms of government support, over the last 3 decades, the central government invested into BRT and LRT for the municipality, and the investment has been huge. During the pandemic, as Dr. Elfading mentioned, a similar thing happened in Germany, but in the case of France, municipalities are the key stakeholders or the key parties for these projects. So they provided subsidy for the operation of transportation. And they also prepared the highest budget, supplementary budget. This was central government, and additional budget was allocated to the municipalities too to improve the transportation. So public transport is already pretty good in France, but they will improve the roads dedicated to bicycles, and also they are focusing on improvements of junctions. And during the pandemic, the central government is trying to help the municipal governments with a budget deficit, and also invest into local transportation to help for the future. So in the Mobility Basic Act, there's a basic philosophy of supporting everyone every day. Another big change coming from COVID-19 pandemic is digitalization of the society really progressed very fast. It's probably the same in Japan. Things were already progressing, but there are 2 unique things about digitalization in France. One is digitalization, including transportation control or management. So mass utilization is now normal in local cities in France. So they do route finding in terms of mobility, people can calculate how much CO2 emission is associated with a route of travel. And municipal governments provide platform for the citizens to do this. And everybody is now taking this for granted. Another digitalization is, in the administrative sector, because of more people working from home. And they want to receive government services without traveling too much, maybe as much as possible online. Smart city implementation was done in Dijon. This is a really comprehensive project. 260,000 working population. This is a size equivalent to Otaru City in Japan. And the smart city urban management digitalization was done under 10 different themes: traffic safety, lighting, snow management, water, and also water for plants and greenery. And integration of digital services was one of the themes. So the citizens can just contact the local government by phone or by email and obtain information that they need immediately. So administrative digitalization was a part of this program. So digitalization for the whole society, as well as mobility, really changed due to pandemic. And fortunately, both the legal framework as well as the government budget funding is going in line with these changes. Thank you. There are some common elements as well as different aspects depending on the country. And it seems that there are so many different pieces working together at the same time. Well, we are beginning to run out of time because all the panelists were so enthusiastic. And we are supposed to be accepting questions from the audience. So we would like to go to this last round of the questions. Change of plan. And please answer within 1 minute, only 60 seconds each. Pedestrians, cyclists, and public transport, including paratransit in Thailand. I was going to talk about this, but anyway, putting that aside now, we want to jump to the last question. How can we focus on the positive aspect of mobility in the future? Well, I wanted to go through this, but because the time is limited, we heard from all the panelists presentations as well as answers to the questions. So just one last comment from each panelist. For mobility that creates value, what is the challenge that we need to address? We come from different places. For example, I'm a member of academic society. That's one of the positions. But anyway, what do we need to do to have mobility in the future that creates value? Please try to answer within 1 minute. Transport is related to environmental and educational issues, as Dr. Efferding mentioned. And also, Dr. Efferding spoke about discovering the neighborhood. There is also leisure, change in patterns of movement, how to spend the leisure time. There are so many different aspects. But anyway, based on all the discussion we had today, if we want to see value created by mobility, by transport, what can we do? What is the most important thing we need to do? Please answer that within 1 minute each. And yes, the time's limited, so please try to answer within 1 minute. Dr. Sanet?
So for the future of urban mobility, so I think about the equity or the justice because of the new technology. So we don't worry about the efficiency and also environmental problem because of new technology such as EV. But like for developing countries, so we think about the equity because we try to make the mobility for all, right? So don't leave someone behind. So the new technology, maybe they can exclude some people. For example, the poor people or the elderly people that cannot use the new technology via the mobile application, for example. So in the future, so we go beyond the limitation now. We can fit the demand and the supply, right? We use the data that create the supply that fit to the all people, the preference. So the next step, we should think about how to make the people for everyone. So maybe not only the affordable price. So it means all the mode should be accessed by all the people in the society. So without the limitation, so I think about the equity and the justice is so important for the next step of urban mobility in the future.
ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much. Equity, as she mentioned, in US or European academic conferences, that's a key word, and that's very true, and that's very important in talking about equity. And for everyone, especially what we have to take care in consideration should be given to a particular group of people as well. And so that everyone should be able to enjoy the transport. So I'd like to ask Dr. El-Fadhin, and I was thinking of just exactly very similar thing. In Germany, what the challenges that we are facing in German cities for dozens of years, the cities are optimized for the vehicles and automobiles for dozens of years in the past, and we have to modify that space. But with everyone's participation and opportunities and autonomous living by everyone, but still, how should we make these cities to be able to explain those things? What need to be changed? Because all of a sudden, if you change the city drastically, then if we change the mode of transportation significantly today, then what we have done so far are convenient. There are people who become dissatisfied because it has been convenient so far in the history. So it is thinking about transportation or change, we need some sort of a good supporting communication for everyone is the biggest challenge issues that we are facing today in German cities. Thank you. In today's Dr. El-Fadhin mentioned about autonomous living, and I cannot use that kind of word very well, but so as I'm very pleased to hear that word, autonomous living, autonomous, and also with that explanation, how we can explain that and that process issues, how to achieve that. I myself think that we would be maybe able to utilize new technologies, for example, to be able to show that using new technologies to enable that. But I think there's still a lot of challenges. So, Ms. Banson, please. Let me talk about the conclusion first. Mobility, being linked with mobility, and also to redistribution of the space, to share the public space. As I have shown you in my pictures, in Paris and in France, and also regional cities in France, the public transport is quite good and extensive. However, still, in the passenger transport, 80% of passenger transport is done by automobiles in France. So the last is the coexistence with automobiles, because automobiles are necessary, so we cannot dispose that. and that the time and the days and people need automobiles, we have to continue to provide the convenience for those automobile users as well, and safety as well. And as a measures, so one of the methods is thinking about environmental conservation. We are now transitioning to EV, electrical vehicles. In 2030, internal combustion new sales of the automobiles will be prohibited. So therefore, we are completely shifting to EV in Europe. The second point, in terms of methodology, is EV, but in terms of society, urban planning, in France, Ville Acvet, that is for the urban planner, it's quite used, such a word. It is a calm transport city. In other words, it is not the 30-kilometer zone and 20-kilometer zone to be introduced in the city, within the cities. Automobiles can use the outside of the central part of the city, but people who can use in the central part of the city, they will provide more pedestrian-only space, and also it is quiet, but still people are active in the central part of the city. So that type of city can be enjoyed. And that also help in the environmental preservation, as well as good also for the health promotion for everyone. And to have that is a concept that we are not going to be the mainstream. So therefore, in ultimately speaking, how we can share the public space in a very good way is very important task. I think those professors and researchers, I'm sure they've been studying about those points, but just 3 years in COVID-19 has changed France very significantly. Hope that you have the opportunity to visit France. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, it's a very quiet, but because of the topic was so interesting, we are running out of time. But the last, with the 3 panelists, thank you very much. We really appreciate that from the remote. With such a state of my throat, but thank you very much for the very wonderful discussions. Now, we'd like to end the discussion among panelists now. Now we'd like to move on to the questions. So that now we are moving on to the question time. For those, if you have questions, please raise your hand if you're on the venue. In the venue, and also in my screen, I don't know the venue, so the staff would probably circulate the microphones, and also from the remote people on the remote, there's a Q&A button that you can place your questions. Well, the question that is asking for the answers is there are 2 of the questions in English requires answers. So we would wait for the remote side. So if there's any question on the venue, actually any in-person question, please. Yes, please raise it. So please answer those questions. My name is Fukuda, Dr. Nakamura. I have very question to the 3 panelists. Thank you very much for very interesting presentation by Banson-san, compact class in Japan. 15-minute city, what is the difference between 15-minute city versus what the Japanese initiative on that, compact city? And the question to Suzanne-san, can I ask a question in Japanese? Yes. And to transform the city is quite challenging. But in Japan, we also have the declining population. To make the city compact, we have to spend a lot of money. And in certain city, to provide the public service would decline. And that is a concern we have. Any comment on that point?
Dr. Pims, I believe that your government now accepts 30 smart city, right? But when I refer the smart city plan in Thailand, they have never talked about like informal transport, like a Sontel. So actually, who can manage such kind of ideas? I also agree maybe like Sontel or some other informal transport very important for the feeder of the mass transit system. But actually, who can develop the idea? Thank you.
はい、福田先生ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much, Dr. Fukuda. Now, for the question, let's go in the sequence of he asked. So, Banson-san, please. Thank you for your question. Let me please correct me if I'm wrong, but compact city is to prevent from city to expand. It is not, it is based on the public transport lines. Residential cities and consumption cities will be to prevent from city to spread. And that has done before in France as well. In this compact city network is public transport networks arranged based on that. On the other hand, 15-minute city concept is quite different because what is expanding, it's not to suppress the expansion of cities, but rather in the city, there's the facilities and city structures and city functions to be increase the convenience of using them. In a most specific example is, for example, especially public transport network, if you want to arrange it, not to arrange the new transport network. In Paris, city of Paris, we are actually doing in each quartier or in the quarter, to plant the trees more and also road space to be utilized more for other purposes. And the one-way street is increased so that to reduce the automobile entry into the central part of the city so that to provide more safer road.
さんの話で学校の話があり
So Professor Efting talked about school. 186 primary schools in France. In front of those schools, they're trying to make the roads safer, like in Japan. But in front of these primary schools, cars are completely excluded. It's dedicated to pedestrians only. And the trees are planted so that the cars cannot enter. It's a tactical avenism. It doesn't require a big budget in order to increase the safety for the road environment. Some schools and preschools, these facilities are not used during weekends, and it's made available for gathering of the community and the sports activities, which means that the citizens do not have to travel very far. Within 15-minute access, they can engage in various activities even on weekends. So that's the 15-minute concept, and that is how it is different from a compact network. I hope that answers your question. Yes. Problem of regional cities, which is losing population. In Germany, there are some regions facing the same problem. As you could see from the map that I showed earlier, former East Germany and former West Germany in the center, for example, in these regions, the population is declining fast, even now. The reason behind this depopulation is because of job opportunities in large cities. People with a high level of education tend to want to live in these larger cities. And we have been addressing this problem for many years already. But first of all, the regional cities could utilize tourism more. That was one way of thinking about this. Or maybe leverage the uniqueness of that local area. For example, if the region was famous for industry, maybe the former plants of factories can be used, turned into sightseeing spots. Maybe you can dress it up or change it to attract tourists. Another thing that was extensively discussed was the following. Conventional way of teaching city planning, urban planning to students maybe was not sufficient because it was based on the assumption that the economy will continue to grow over time. But going forward, the focus has to be shifted from that to something else. In other words, how can we make the cities smaller and more compact? We have to pay more attention and focus on that aspect of city planning. But on top of that, the situation changed because of the COVID-19 pandemic. If you work in a large city, well, actually more people are returning to the rural areas or regional areas because what they can do is work in the office in a large city twice a week and spend the remaining 5 days of the week in the countryside. If they don't have to commute every day, if it's just twice a week, they don't mind long commute. We don't know what's going to happen in the future going forward, but I believe that this is a new opportunity for the regions. Thank you. Dr. Sanit, please.
And thank you very much from the question from Fukuda Sensei. It's quite difficult, but I will explain step by step. So the big problem for transportation management in Thailand, there's so many organizations that take responsibility for urban transportation system. For example, so many service providers in Bangkok and the Department of Land Transportation are the regulator. Right? So there is no organization that take responsibility for informal transportation in Thailand now. Informal transportation, the service provider, they own the vehicle and they set the group of organization and get the permission from the Department of Land Transportation. So the solution how to improve the informal transportation, the central government have to decentralize the transportation authority to the local government. I mean that in Bangkok also there are so many the organization that like for example, so many service providers. So the better way that the central government should be decentralize the transportation authority to the BMR, not BMA, because of Bangkok and vicinity, right? They have to join together to take responsibility for all the mode of public transportation, like a transportation for London. So we need the new organization that take care of all mode in the Bangkok and vicinity, right? And the central government decentralize the transportation authority to the local government. The same situation, the other city outside Bangkok also. Now the service provider, they have to get the permission, the license to have the service provider from the Department of Land Transportation that have the central government. So the same situation, the central government, the Ministry of the Transportation should decentralize the authority, the transportation authority to the city or city in Thailand that they can operate the informal city by themselves. Is it okay?
Thank you very much. If there are some follow-up questions, maybe we can do that later. Well, the time is limited, but maybe we can accept one more question from the floor in person. Yes, my name is Obo. Thank you for this opportunity. Please ask your question. Yes. I really appreciate this opportunity to have this meeting face-to-face and also online. I was very happy to listen to all the discussions today. Now, if you think about what it means to create value, some kind of consensus is needed. And decision-making is needed in terms of what kind of city or transportation we want to have. We need to have the same value. which means that it requires leaders. You're talking about delegating the authority from the central government to the local governments, but I think leadership is going to be very important because we need financing behind all these different initiatives. Now, today we're hearing about examples from other countries too. But when it comes to Japan, how do we understand this? What do we need to understand in terms of leadership in creating value in the transportation in Japan? Thank you. Well, the time's limited, so I would like to ask Dr. Elfading to respond to this question. I believe that leadership is important. And whenever the new administration comes in, things change. Depending on where you are in the region, people's behavior may be completely different. Therefore, yes, leadership matters, but that is not the only thing that matters. Awareness of the general public needs to be nurtured at the same time in parallel. Within Germany, the general atmosphere is that we are now entering a new era, a new generation. Younger people working in the government offices now is very different from the old generation who grew up with an automotive-centric approach. And I believe that will make a big difference too.
I hope that answers your question. Yes, that was fine. Thank you very much. Now, we are running out of time, but now, okay, from the floor, that's fine. Thank you. Now, from overseas participants, there were 3 questions. So I think that has the panelists also seen the questions? There are 3 questions from overseas. The 3 questions has been already received and looked at by the panelists. That is my question to the panelists. Or should I read it out? Yes, please read it out. Okay, from the first question.
City Council in implementing transport solutions, and how can the role be enhanced? はい、では、手短にということで、バンソンさんから一言お願いしたいと思います。
先生、ごめんなさい。お声があんまり聞こえなかったんですが。
I couldn't really listen to. Could you please speak in Japanese again? Yes. No, I couldn't hear your voices. Sorry.
地方都市の議会。
The first question is, how important is the role of local city councils in implementing public transport solutions? How can their role be enhanced? Is the question. So I think the local city council is a key word. How can they make by the public transportation? I see. So that's the local city council, local governments implementing the public transport solutions. In France, not only the traffic signals policies, but the traffic policies is formulated in the law as the traffic plan, master plan, is a part of the city planning, and that's already in the what is often said is to make the city for everyone. And that is quite a strength and a feeling that people have by the French people, and not only the citizens, but also by the leadership people as well. In terms of traffic policies, urban policies are formulated, and those consciousness, and that is what they are thinking. So one of the challenges is the create the value. And in French society, there are two important values: is environmental conservations, and also to make the cities and towns which is easy to live for the next generation. The second point that I want is difficult to communicate to Japanese, but the solidarity, sense of solidarity in the society in France, because there's 60%. The 70% of the, because of the heavy tax in French cities, because the residential taxes and the regional local taxes is quite high rate in France you have to pay. So with such a high rate of tax, and then by getting the resources and revenues from that in local governments, they can provide a lot cheaper public transport, and also to make the pedestrian walk, which is very easy to walk. That is a mission of social mission, and that is a mission of the social aspect in the society by the governments. So from the high net worth people getting the tax from, and then to the redistribution of the rich or money into the other people, and that is the to have the park, as Dr. Efadin mentioned about the low-income people have less parks, but in France, these parks and the safe roads and the very less expensive public transport can be enjoyed by everyone, and that is the use by using the public fund, and that is a philosophy of France, and that is also quite well taking ground in regional cities as well, and that the people choose the leadership. The mayor elections is not the city councilman, but in the mayors, about 60% high rate of the voting. So for us in our cities, what's going to happen we are quite interested in what's going to happen because of the high tax rate we pay, our people have high interest in this topic with high interest, and also to reach consensus, they think of the more time to consider and to reach consensus among people in France. So with this, it's not just the same kind of people making the legislation and making cities or urban towns, no. But in France, gender diversity and the age diversity, and about 50% of the administration and the councilmen are 50%, and 2/3 are females, and 2/3 in the 50% of the congressmen, councilmen are 50%, and very young people as well. So a lot of diversified age group of people with gender diversity as well to formulate the traffic policy. Because they're engaged in such a traffic policy from the various perspective, different type of values, different needs to be addressed, and to make the new towns and cities are now progressing in France. So how the local governments are involved, if you think about this, for our residents and the cities and people's interest in making the towns and cities is very important. I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. In each country, and the relationship between the central government versus the local governments, and then the people versus the leadership and city councilmen. But in local cities, people have a high interest, and also the leaders' sense of responsibility is quite strong. And when I went there, if you have and then some people said, if you have complained, you can just do not choose me as a mayor. That was a comment I heard. So I should read in Japanese, perhaps. Okay. The second question that I want to ask you, while business may want individual private ownership of transportation, the sustainability angle would prefer public transport and spaces. Which model should the government focus on in the present and the future? The answer is very simple. It's a public, but there's a private space, and private transport is also understood. But what we should focus on the public transport. And that is what I think that's all people's opinion on this, to focus on the public transport. The last question is, do you see this is a question for to Dr. Eifelden. So I have to read in Japanese. For Suzanne Eifelden, in what ways or aspects safe journey to and from school programs for students and their companies like parents or siblings can be integrated in a line of research? In what ways of aspects of safe journey to and from school programs for students can be integrated in your line of research? Thank you very much for the good questions. In terms of safety for the students and education for that, and I think that the town itself and how the people think you have to think about and we don't really have the things to be changed. What is often discussed in Germany is the automobile, how we shouldn't continue, nothing is going to be changed if we continue to use the automobile in the same way. So now automobile is shifting to EV. If the traffic volume does not did not get reduced, then necessary space for the commuting to school cannot be provided. So how can we change the city or town? Then we have to think of the diversity expanded for the mode of transport, and that needs to be supported. And also, as you mentioned in the beginning, going back to that point as well, because needs are different. So public transport, bicycles, and walking is all necessary. So on demand and various methods, mode of transportation is necessary. And with that understanding, and to be understood by society, and that is communication is very important.
So the city has to explain what is being done to its citizens. Transport education going forward is not just about traffic safety and responding to the traffic. It's more about what kind of city do you want to live in? What kind of environment do you want to see around you? We need to really shift the focus of the discussion. Thank you. I think you probably summarized the whole discussion today. And we do have one more question from Stanton-san. So multiple private players involved. Is there any good example? Well, there's a transport federation in Germany. That's a good example. And also in Bogota, we have seen a similar example, and also Seoul. And there are many papers available, and I will try to respond to this question separately later. Thank you very much. Now, education in the past was more about how do we align ourselves to the traffic or transport. But we have to shift away from that and start thinking about what kind of city or environment do we want to live in, and what should the transport do to support that. And cars can be a part of that support, and I really understand this concept. This debate will continue in the future, and including the result of the meeting today, IATSS will continue to deliver the message based on the comments given from the panelists today. And that concludes the Q&A for today's program. Dr. Sani, Dr. Elferding, and also Ms. Vanson, thank you very much for your kind participation. Professor Nakamura and all the panelists, thank you very much indeed. And that concludes the panel discussion. Now we would like to ask the panelists to come down from the stage.
それで
Now, lastly, we'd like to invite IATSS Managing Director, Dr. Satoshi Kamada, who will make the closing remark. Good afternoon. My name is Kamada. I am the Managing Director for IATSS. And in closing this symposium, I'd like to make the closing remark as an organizer. With the COVID-19 problem, it's still continuing and challenging situation continues, but we have even though there are some limitation in the on-site participation, but we like to appreciate your attendance. And online, we have a lot of people attending, not only in Japan, from all over the world. We have the attendance from all over the world. About 300 people have viewed and participated in this symposium. Thank you for your participation despite your busy schedule. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for that.
またディスカッションに参加して
And also, I'd like to appreciate Dr. Suzanne Elfading, Dr. Pim Sanit, and Dr. Banson Fujiyumi. Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation as well as panel discussion. I'd like to express my sincere appreciation. And also, I'd like to appreciate Dr. Fumihiko Nakamura, who is a member of our society or association, who done the keynote presentation as well as the coordinator for the panel, even though remotely. He has done a very great role, and thank you very much for your support. Thanks to all of you, including the questions, we are able to conduct very active discussions and very informative, and actual specific recommendations are included, and very significant time we are able to spend. Thank you very much. In Gifts Forum, its overview, as we mentioned already, the President and Mr. Nakamura has already mentioned, but in 2024, which marks our 50th anniversary of our association, IATSS, we've been conducting every year this international forum, Gifts, and this marks the 8th year. And we have a lot of participation from the researchers and practitioners from Japan as well as from overseas to think of the change and transformation in regards to thinking and ideas about the recent traffics, as well as the people's lives relationship with the towns and cities, urban areas, and traffics. In the first time, we have conducted Gifts in 2015. We have invited very well experts. And within second time, we have discussion in traffic safety. After that, in third and fourth times, we have also expanded to the urban planning and how people should live and lifestyles. And number fifth, we have focused again on traffic safety and also including practitioners to have done the discussion from various perspectives. So every time we have the different viewpoint shifted and changed to think about the traffics.
社会のいろんな問題点を直視しながら
And then to look at have the very wide scoped viewpoint to do this discussion. And this time, under the title of the traffic culture to create the values, and very interesting and stimulating discussion we are able to conduct. And people's living lifestyles and the city urban planning and making, that's a hot topic today.
変化している領域でもあろうかと思います。今日の議論
That is also the area that is changing very rapidly in this domain. Hope that today's discussion will be useful for further vitalization of cities and also reviewing the public transport, and that to be very pleased to hear such a good trigger to start discussion. As we mentioned earlier, and the safety, the situation in regards to traffic is also changing because of the COVID-19 and also safety aspect. As I explained before, in 2024, next year and the year after, we would like to continue this international forum, but even after that, we'd like to make some attractive discussion forum. So in a society meeting or association, we'd like to continue to do discussions. And in terms of the IATSS, is not a significant, huge organization, no, but it is quite interdisciplinary and also with a smaller number of people, but then we have a good membership. So based on today's discussion, tomorrow, we have we will tomorrow discuss about how we should manage and conduct our association tomorrow. And also with the 50-year anniversary, with the diversified achievement can be worked on. And that is what we'd like to do. And members and General Secretariat Office will be working on that. So we hope to have further event in the future. Lastly, I'd like to make some announcement of our association's event by IATSS. The major activities, we have the study group meetings focusing on the research project for the traffics. We have about 10 themes, working groups or the research groups, study groups are ongoing. In these study groups, having the big theme topic and hoping to convert that into policies. And next year, in April 14th, what has been chosen as the outcome of the researches will be regular reporting meeting will be conducted on April 14th. Hope you have participated in that meeting as well. This meeting was done every year. It was only done in Japanese language in the past, but next time we will have simultaneous interpretation from Japanese into English. It can also utilize the English material as well. And also, obviously, online access is possible. So please participate in that from overseas as well. And in closing this event, I'd like to ask for the traffic and safety, wonderful papers as well as research, and also international traffic. We have the award ceremony will be given as well. Hope that you can have such an event as well as an award ceremony. So in closing, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation for the people who attend this forum. And also, I'd like to appreciate the Secretariat Office and people who have helped us organizing this. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to conclude. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. With that, we'd like to conclude the 8th IATSS International Forum Gifts Symposium will be completed.